Synagogue Tech Forum. We need theme music. We need theme like welcome to Synagogue Tech Forum. So, oh God, wait a second. Now I'm hearing. Now it's streaming in my ear. Stop streaming in my ear.
We hope we're streaming in your ears. That happened last
time too. No, it's just in my ear. Sorry, that happened last time too. All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you. It's Thursday, 3 o'clock Eastern time. Let's make the rounds. Everyone say hello. And then I'm going to turn it over to Rabbi Tobias Moss to lead us through today. So, Leo. Hi.
Hi there. Welcome. Hello. I'm in a different location than I am normally. Hence, I've got big boy headphones on.
Big boy headphones. John, how you doing today?
Doing great. Greetings from Monterey. And Leo, I love the halo. I always thought you had one, but now I see it in the mirror.
Can you see that, Leo?
Thank you. Yeah, I can. I can. If I just frame and picture myself just a bit like that, there you go.
I hadn't noticed that. That's fantastic.
I know. I need to turn it down a bit, but yeah.
I love it. David, how are you?
Hi, I'm fantastic. Dave Kaufman, calling in from Vancouver, BC, longtime listener, first-time panelist. Glad to be here.
David, we're so happy to have you here. I'm going to skip over Loren. We're not going to let him talk quite yet. I'm going to let Rabbi Tobias Moss introduce him. But Tobias, how are you?
I'm doing really well here in Minneapolis, where we went from negative 15 to 33 today. So we're in a much better place. And I'm really excited for this Synagogue Tech Forum to welcome my friend, Rabbi Loren Berman, on to speak with us. So welcome, Loren. And we're going to focus on you and your organization, Sefaria, which I think most people will be well acquainted with, and Sefaria.org, which is, you can give an elevator summary of what it is, but I think in the large part, what we're excited about is to hear about kind of some new and expanding ways that Sefaria is being used and new tools that Sefaria is offering. And I welcome from the panel, as we go through this conversation, to jump in with your experiences using Sefaria and your questions on how Sefaria can fulfill more roles for you. So how you doing, Rabbi Loren Berman? Loren, welcome to the Synagogue Tech Forum.
Thank you for having me.
So what is your role at Sefaria, and how long have you been on the team, and how long have you been using Sefaria?
Great question. I'm a bit of a late adopter. I've been using Sefaria now for about 4 years, but Sefaria is several years older than that. I've been on the team for about a year and a half. Basically, right after I finished rabbinical school, I went straight to Sefaria. And I'm just I play one small role in a very large and wonderful team. We have teams of content engineers. We have product engineers. We have content, people who are acquiring content. We have a learning department, which is where I sit. Of course, we have HR and all the others. So we are like a really great and large team, large meaning a lot of functions. They're about between 20 and 30 of us total. I'm on the learning team. So what that basically means is our team is all about how can people, families, synagogue members, rabbis, individuals learn and teach better on Sefaria. My particular role is one more in engagement and outreach, which is working with other people, other organizations to help further our strategic goals. So that could mean finding more content to put on, maybe there are certain audiences or certain authors, who we don't have, or certain genre of text that we don't have that we think people would really want. Sometimes I go out and try to work with organizations who are creating that material to help bring it to Sefaria. I create holiday materials. So if you're ever on our educator listserv, you might find some source sheets that I've made or some collections that I put together. And then I also help out a little bit on the tech side. I'm not a coder. I don't know much about tech, which is great because Sefaria is not meant only for tech people. It's really for everybody. And so our chief learning officer is an educator by trade, not strictly a tech person. And that's by design. And so to that end, there are certain features that we've recently introduced on Sefaria. And part of my work has been getting that out there to the world, getting people to use it, to appreciate it, to hear their feedback, and to help our product team, our engineers develop better experiences for everybody. So that's a bit about what I do at Sefaria. I'm happy to answer more questions, tell you why I love Sefaria, but I really want to hear how you appreciate it, what you want to hear from me.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, so there's Sefaria. I think most of us first got to it as there's a lot of Jewish texts you can access at the click of a button, and they're hyperlinked anytime it's mentioned anywhere else, anytime this verse is mentioned in a commentary, and we started seeing that. And then I think the next big step that I experienced in Sefaria is the source sheets that people could build and then make public. And so if someone else has already made a great source sheet about Passover, then I can just access that and see their organization of Jewish sources. So I know there's now some newer tools also, but so let's be starting with the older tools of just kind of like the accessing the library of Jewish text and building source sheets that can be shared. What have been some kind of novel uses of those two functions, maybe because of the pandemic and remote learning, or just kind of new ways you're seeing people adopt those tools that maybe even Sefaria didn't expect, or just has been an exciting use case?
Yeah, definitely. I just want to take a step back. I don't know what everybody's familiarity here is with Sefaria, but we actually like to see ourselves as something more than a Jewish library. Libraries, I like libraries. Not everybody likes libraries. Libraries are quiet, libraries are fixed, but we actually do try to see ourselves more closer to a Beit Midrash. We're trying to figure out exactly what we want to call ourselves in some ways, but we're more than, as you said, more than just about having a bunch of text there. And also we're more than a source sheet builder. A lot of people either see us as one or the other, but as you mentioned, there are other innovative uses of Sefaria. And I think we are right now just sort of at the beginning. We have all these ideas for different ways people can use Sefaria, and indeed many people do use Sefaria in these ways. But I think that there is, and I can say even for myself personally, sometimes this sort of fixed impression of what Sefaria is. It's a library and it's a source sheet builder, and so sometimes people aren't necessarily using it in the ways one could imagine. I'm happy to show you a few of those and tell you a bit more. Does that work for you, Tobias, and folks here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And
great.
also, I think you might be about to share your screen, but also to anyone watching on Facebook or YouTube, if you have any questions to solve like a specific way that you try to use Sefaria, but it hasn't worked for you yet, you could throw that type of question. Or if you have dreams for Sefaria, you could ask a question to that effect as well, and we'll bring those into the conversation. Or if you're watching this later, comment here, and I'm sure Loren would be happy to respond as well. All right, so Loren, take us through.
Great. So we're on a Sefaria source sheet here. If you want me to take you sort of deeper into the library, I'm happy to. But the way I like to frame it is, when asking the question, what can you do and make with Sefaria? I like to think of this Jewish text, which talks about really the value of Torah as not being about raw materials, but what you can make of them. So there's a story about a king and a servant, and there's two servants, and each of them is given wool and flax, basically, and one comes back a lot later and brings back the wool and flax. The king says, thank you, more or less. And the other one brings a whole tablecloth and bread made of this wool and flax. And that's really what Torah is it's about taking raw materials and making something more beautiful with it. And that's how I see Sefaria. It's a platform in a lot of ways, but it can be used in ways that are beyond sort of the raw materials that are there. So a few different ways that synagogues in particular, we encourage to use Sefaria. If you think of the Ten Commandments or the Torah given as on two tablets. In fact, we have many now, not in the overly cliche tablets of today, but actually ways that tablets are very fixed, right? When you're looking at tablets, it's like very passive. It's a very I guess it was a very physical experience, but also very passive of like looking from a distance at what these tablets are. And so what we try to do with synagogues, or we've sort of suggested that individuals do, and some of this we have seen done, is for one, families might get together, right, and study parsha by parsha. We make it very easy to find the different parshiot. Sometimes just like what is the parsha is like one step already like too hard for some people. And so families at a synagogue might study the parsha together, right, on a source sheet right there, sort of family discussions or conversations, and share that with the community. We have something called topics pages, which basically is we have thousands of topics, right, related to holidays and biblical figures, Talmudic figures, beliefs, laws, food. I can click in here. If I want to know what does Judaism say about alcohol, right? Here we go. Here are a bunch of sources connected to alcohol, a bunch of text sheets that people have created using Sefaria.
Loren,
yeah.
Go to alcohol for the moment, because
Sure.
Why not?
Here's another way to do it. If I just went this way. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I often go to topics or search by topic, and then I always go straight to sheets because I haven't known how sources is organized.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how sources gets organized? What things float to the top?
Yeah, so there is actually a teaching in the introduction to the Path of the Just, Mesilat Yesharim, which talks about how this Musar work of ethical teachings that he says in the beginning, what I'm going to tell you, you probably already know. It's probably been right in front of you the whole time, and because it's been right in front of you the whole time, you didn't recognize it was there, or so it's sometimes a review is helpful, or just to point out the obvious, and that's what I'm going to do. Right here, actually, these 3 dots will tell you how it got here. Right, that the source is connected to alcohol by sheets by Sefaria users, meaning a lot of Sefaria users have created text sheets with this particular text. Other times it won't say that. In this case, it does. Sometimes it'll say it's from a different database called Osplaklaria. In this case, I guess, oh, here we go. This source is connected to alcohol by Osplaklaria, right, which is a different database that we take some data from. And so that's how that ended up there. And in terms of how and a lot of this is in terms of frequency and relevance, and you can filter it based on, chronology, right? Maybe I want to know what the Torah says or some of the earlier texts, so I can click chronology. And so now here's Genesis. It's a lot earlier than say Megillah, which is, thousands of years later. Yeah, Tobias.
All right. I already got that was the nugget for me. I'm sure there'll be other nuggets, but I've totally avoided this sources page because I didn't know why it was organized and how it was organized. And so thank you, Loren. That's very cool to see that. And so it's kind of like pulls from the sheets that users have created and says, okay, almost everyone who makes a source sheet about alcohol includes this Purim source. So let's make sure that's in that sources list. And then the chronological organizing is super useful also.
Yeah, definitely.
I just want to agree. That kind of blows my mind. I've also always avoided the source. I just go right to the sheets. That's amazing. Just amazing.
Of course. And I just want to show you something here really quickly. I know it's not a tutorial, but so just for alcohol, let me just type in ALC just so you can see here, like when you see the hashtag, right, because it's an autocomplete, this takes me to this page here, the topics page. This will take me to a user and their page, just so you can see that. But if I want to see where does the word alcohol appear in English, right, where we are, many of our books are not in English. We have a lot of translations, but if I wanted to see, I'm an English speaker, right? If I just click here, search for alcohol, it'll give me that exact word, right? And here it'll give me, as you see here, 101 sources we have that happen to have that in English, right? And if I want to narrow it down, I can do this too, right? I can like only Mishnah. This is been here the whole time. I'm telling you, it's right here. And you can narrow it down, right, etc. You can search. Oh no, I want to know where does it appear in, Barachot, so I can just type in Barach. There we go. It's only in the Jerusalem Talmud. Maybe it talks about it in the Babylonian too. But anyways, that's but my point here. Yeah. Go ahead.
You could also search by Hebrew words in the same function.
Hebrew words. Yeah, totally. And the reason why I wanted to mention topics pages is because, for example, a lot of shuls, a lot of synagogues and temples will have like a theme for the year, right? It might be kindness or chesed, right? Generosity, whatever it might be. And maybe, you could have your congregants, for example, type in generosity, right? Or chesed or kindness, right? See what comes up, right? Generosity. And maybe you would, different people could, different families could go through and look at different texts and report back in some sort of learning environment. So, these texts. Yeah. So that's why I brought the topics.
David, you want to jump in?
I just wanted to, I guess it's sort of a question, but also sort of an insight, something that I learned about Sefaria that I really hadn't thought of. Back in, when was this? May, this past May, I was really honored. I got to interview Sarah Wolkenfeld and as part of my Unmute series. And she taught me something that I really had never thought of. I was talking about how wonderful it is when I'm teaching classes, I can build all my source sheets here and da. And she said, maybe you shouldn't build your source sheets. Maybe your students should be building your source sheets or their source sheets. I don't know why, but I always thought of this as a resource for me, not that the process of building a source sheet was itself the learning. And now that you've shown us, that the topic that you can search by topic, and then it automatically tells you this may be the most or one of the most relevant sources for you to include. I mean, it just elevates the whole Sefaria experience to ways that I had not even thought of.
100%. And I think that's why it's so easy to get stuck in. It's a library, it's a source sheet builder. And who creates source sheets? Educators build source sheets, right? It's a lot more. And yeah, one of the things that we're trying to do, and we've changed the homepage. If you go to the homepage, let me just see here. If you go to the homepage, for example, right, we're trying to be as beginner friendly, as newbie friendly as possible. So you come here, you don't have to know what's Tanakh, right? It tells you right here, right? For any text you go to, there's always this about this text. I can click it and it tells me what it is I'm looking at. What translation am I looking at, right? A lot of times, let's say I go to some Kabbalistic text, right? And I'd never heard of it before, right? I can always, for any text, right? I can always, if I end up here, I can click about this text. We want this to be a place where anybody can come. And it's not only for educators. And also sort of maybe what you were alluding to, and Sarah and I and Rachel Buckman on our team are trying to work on this, is how can we actually teach from Sefaria? Why are we doing source sheets? Why are we using source sheets? Everyone has the work in front of them, right? And what does it mean when I teach a text, but I don't give the learner permission to see what happens before that text, what happens after that text? When I teach from the book itself, right? On the one hand, if it's a physical book, then if it doesn't really help me, if they want to know, oh, well, how is this relevant for my life, right? But however, if you're on here, if you're teaching from the library itself, how is it relevant for my life? Well, let's look. Topics. What are the topics that are associated with this very first verse, right? Heavens, maybe not as helpful, right? We have something called web pages, which will link you to thousands and thousands, and there are ways that we can make this more manageable, of other websites, not Sefaria, that cite this particular verse, and actually go in. And this is the most pluralistic Beit Midrash you've ever seen, right? Eish Torah, there's Mishpacha Magazine, OU, there's HUC, Hebrew College, Trua, Reconstructing, it's all here, right? And then I can go directly to that particular article. I'm in incognito mode, so it's not working. Oh, there it is, right? So we're trying to, we think that when you're actually in the library and not restricting somebody to one particular page, they can see a lot more. They can also take a bigger, more of a role in ownership of their own learning. Yeah, David, go ahead.
Can we geek out for just a second? And if you don't know the answer, that's fine. But how are you all crawling the web? I mean, how is that happening?
Yeah. So in this particular case, I was so blessed that one of my strengths, I guess, is I'm a hustler, and I reach out to people and I track them down, and whatever I need to do to get them to talk to me, I'll get them to talk to me. In this particular case, we had a code, a very simple, at least from the outside, line of code, that if another website, most websites are able to put it on their website template, then whenever somebody goes on their website, it calls Sefaria and it says, hey, look here, and we will detect where are their sources cited. And that will do two things. First of all, it will create a link on Sefaria, right? That tells us here, right? For example, like this is here, but also on their site, it does the same thing. So for example, if I go to Times of Israel, and you might have noticed this, you just didn't know. If you ever go to My Jewish Learning, for example, is one of the early adopters of this, right? Genesis 1:26, I can click it and a little thing will come up here, right? Which is good for learners. Again, this is all about the learner and I tell you, this really keeps rabbis honest, because a lot of times the Midrash says, well, what Midrash? And like, what if I want to know? I want to learn more. Don't just tell me Midrash says. And sometimes they'll say Genesis 1:25 says, and God said, let us make, the human being in our image. But in fact, it was actually 1:26. So it is a bit of a spell checker in some ways, but I think it keeps us honest. And it also requires rabbis to continue learning and not just say a teaching they heard once before, but it also allows the people that are learning to actually become not their own rabbis, right? I mean, you're supposed to get for yourself a rabbi, but to become more learned Jews or individuals in the community. So this linker is like really cool. And we weren't just crawling websites. We actually had to establish relationships with all these individuals, every single website you see here. And there are some that we don't include. There are more, but there are at least 70. And I like to say that when we hit number 70 of different websites, because it's like 70 faces on the side here. But this is like amazing. And the fact is that all of these websites are discussing Torah. And the one thing that's connecting all of these websites, the one thing connecting Aish and JTS and Rabbi Sachs, and I can, keep going, right, is Sefaria. Or rather, not Sefaria, it's Torah. Torah is the thing that's connecting them, and we are sort of showing you how to do that. So maybe it's not as cute as like we're crawling the whole web, but I think it highlights also the human sort of.
That's even more
relationship
amazing.
here.
It's even more amazing.
Yeah. So this is my personal pride and joy. Not that I made the code, but that like these codes are on these websites now, and now people get to learn from it. It's amazing.
Yeah, that is amazing. I'd love to dive deeper into how you've seen kind of flipping the classroom with Sefaria, or how you've seen like specific ways that in a teaching environment people are engaging their learners with Sefaria. And I have my own example that I'd love to share in this venue, and maybe you've seen things that are like it. But also what I noticed when we were fully remote, I was able to teach with Sefaria and teach Sefaria more easily because everyone was already on a device. And in person, then it's just like, I can have it on a TV behind me or whatnot, but it's harder to get them using it, my students using it themselves. I did used to use the Sefaria phone app, but don't have it installed at the moment. But do you want me to show my example, or do you want to jump in with?
Yeah, I would love to see your example. I think you're alive in the field, so this is real.
So I'll show my example, and then if anyone else on the panel has a similar way that they've kind of leveraged Sefaria, or Lauren, if you can think of anything that has been done similarly. So I took my 9th graders, I think it was maybe 7th, I think 9th graders, on a Sefaria safari using a Google form. So I put everyone in breakout rooms and then gave them this Google form, and I think basically no other instructions. Who is in your Sefaria Safari group? What button do you press to turn the whole website into Hebrew, into English? Why is this website called Sefaria? Check all that apply. Because Judaism begins on a safari. Because it sort of rhymes with Wikipedia. Because Sefer means technology. Because Sefer means book, etc. What do you find if you search Tobias Moss? Because I have a couple of public source sheets. Click this box after you spent 2 to 3 minutes just stumbling around. What's the current Parshat HaShavua? How many books of the writings are there? Hint, look in that section called Tanakh. And then the visualizations, which are a cool feature of Sefaria. To write down 3 words or phrases that you don't understand within Sefaria. And then I guided them to a source sheet by saying, find the topic Tzaddik, click on it, paste your definition there, and then get into this Tzaddik source sheet about Noah. So I've only done this kind of thing once with this one fully remote group, but I loved it. And when I had my 9th graders again back in person this year, I was like, shoot, we can't do that lesson in the same way. How am I going to adapt this for in person or what have you? So I'd love to hear just kind of what else you've seen similar to that, or how you've seen it work in person and remote.
Yeah, I love that. And what's so great about you showing me that is the fact is that you did this on Google Forms, right? So we at Safari would have no idea. We have no idea, right? So there's so many people who are using Safari and we have no idea how they're using it. But what I think what you do and what you did there is brilliant. There are ways that one could do what you did on Sefaria, right? For example, you could have made that into a sheet, right? It wouldn't be as clean necessarily. And Sefaria is not everything for everyone. Like, that's the truth, right? And there are tons of other websites out there. And that's why like all of our data on Sefaria is free for everybody, right? The Midrash says that the Torah was given in the desert because we're supposed to be free. There's nothing, nobody owns anything in the desert. We don't own much. We pay for everything that we do and we show, like the Talmud was not, there's several millions of dollars to buy, and then we release it to the public. And so any website you're using, many of them, Al Torah, Merkava, all amazing websites. A lot of them use our data, and we are happy to. Like, that's, if everybody's using our data, that's great. So we're not everything for everybody. We acknowledge that, and sometimes, forms are better. One could have made a sheet like that, what you did, and then you would have each individual student make a copy of that source sheet, right, and share it with you, and they could write those answers on there. It's not as fun necessarily as click, and you click send, and it's like, oh yeah, you're done. But there is a way one could do that. And there are teachers who we have a function where we are phasing it out, but it's called assignments, where you can actually basically do that. And you will be notified whenever your student makes a copy of your sheet and submits it. And then you can give notes back and forth on that particular source sheet. We have something called collaborative source sheets. Every source sheet. Can
you just mention why you're phasing that out?
Yeah, well, we're changing our editor. Our current source sheet editor with the blocks is now going to be, I can show you if you want to see a preview. It's like, yeah, I can't show you.
Because I don't, that's the one thing I struggle with is the editor. I feel so limited by it. I'd love to see the.
So the new editor will be closer to a word processor, closer to it. And it's still in beta. So we're testing it out. We have some users who are testing it. If you want to test it, send me an email. I'm happy to give you the link. I'm happy to do that. You can take a note. Just though, in terms of other creative uses that I have seen. So first of all, believe it or not, just like you can put pictures and songs on source sheets and images on source sheets, please make sure that they are in the Creative Commons, not copyrighted. That can be problematic, but that should not stop you from making multimedia source sheets, which is great for any sort of experiential education. You can actually, it's a sort of a niche use, but you can actually live stream. You can actually live stream to a Sefaria sheet. If you have a YouTube live link, just put it in a source sheet. And then when it's live, it's live. And so if you're a rabbi and you have a community, everybody could log into Zoom, especially if you want that community feel. But if it's something else, you're welcome to have a source sheet. It's your face right here, but all the texts are right there. You don't have to click back and forth. You don't even necessarily have to share your screen.
In fact, we're doing that right now, right?
In fact, we are doing that right now.
Show it.
Okay, so let me let this see.
It's so cool.
Give me a second here. Let us see here. Let's see, for some reason in my incognito mode, for some reason it's not going at this moment. So we're gonna pass. But I promise you, they all saw it earlier. It works. But some other very practical things that people have done: scavenger hunts and bar trivia nights. So you can actually, just like what you did, Tobias, for example, if you were to say, find me the first place it says tzaddik in Tanakh, right? That would take them, they would have to go and search for it. They would get to that verse. And on that verse would be connected another source sheet that says, maybe clue number 1, Tobias's class, and they would click and they say, congratulations, you got it. And the next one could be, Esther's name means hidden, find the verse where it discusses Esther's hiddenness. I don't know, I'm making it up, right? And then there would be another sheet connected to there. And so you can actually make scavenger hunts on Sefaria. Teachers, educators have done that. Other things people have done, mixed media galleries, like artistic Talmud commentaries. So there's a group in Berlin, Tobias and I are familiar with them, and they have a whole Talmud commentary. And so what they do is they put sections of Talmud on a sheet, and on that sheet, they'll have the artistic interpretations of that particular section of Talmud, as well as the artist's commentary on that, explaining their art and how they perceive that piece. So that's a cool thing that people have done. Or midrash, right? Maybe your students want to sort of draw a midrash or paint a midrash. What does that look like? Or draw Revelation, right? And then you can share that sheet with parents, for example, so that they can know what they and other students are doing. It's sort of like the back to school night, but it's on Sefaria. A couple other things like crowdsourcing sources. So one could do this in a couple of ways. First of all, I was in an educator group the other day, and we were talking about Tu B'Shvat and how it's sort of hard to connect to Tu B'Shvat sometimes. And so we created a sheet, and I can just let me show it to you. Actually, it was really cool. So here we go. Right. So this particular sheet was actually compiled by many of us. Right. So this particular text was submitted by Zoe Jick. I believe she's in Berkeley, right? Jeremy Borovitz submitted this sheet. Michael Lapidus, who's a rabbi, maybe some of you know him, submitted that sheet, right? Et cetera, et cetera. Rabbi Anna Bonheim submitted this sheet, this particular text.
So you created one source sheet that multiple people can add to?
Yeah, and this was really cool. There's a very popular internet figure, and he's a rabbi, and he's a great educator named Akiva Weisinger, and he made this thing on Facebook. He said, what are we celebrating? And then hundreds of people submitted different things that we're celebrating on Hanukkah on this one source sheet. And anybody can do that on any sheet. You just have to change the settings of that sheet. So that ability is there. So that's a pretty cool use.
Can you show the settings for that?
Yeah. So it's going to be a little different with the new editor, but it's more or less the same. In this particular case, basically, let's see. So if I log in, so if I were to log in, then I would go to share, So this is in the new editor, so it's a little different. Let's see here. Oh, it has to be my sheet. That's why. So in this particular case, let's just say I create a new sheet. Now here's the new editor. Hello, new editor.
And for anyone who's watching and seeing this go by fast, Lauren, maybe at some point you can also just mention where kind of like a beginner ramp resources are if there's already YouTube tutorials. But for now, stick with what you're showing us.
Yeah, we have a whole help center. On Sefaria with basically tutorials for everything. And also please email us, hello@sefaria.org. We will get back to you within 24 hours with a very detailed response. We promise it'll be helpful.
Did you just type Genesis 1:1 and press return and it just showed up?
Yeah, before I'll explain to you what I did. So this is I know we're kind of all over here. So, but just to answer your question, David, real quick. So under share, this is in the new editor, right? Here it says people with this link can view, add, edit. So in this case, they did add. You can still do this with your other one, with your old editor. All you have to do is click share, and then you'll see there's like a little button there. This is the new editor. As I said, it's a bit more of it's a new type of editor, type of editor, right?
We're living in the future right now. For the first time, Synagogue Tech Forum is actually in the future.
As it says in the Torah, right? Say Exodus 2:1, right? Et cetera.
Whoa!
So it's cool. You can add, right? So anyway, so it's a process, but so I don't want to get too distracted with that. But that was about the collaborative. Yeah, Dave, I see your hands up. Dave, please go ahead.
Thanks, Lauren. For some of us who are just scratching the surface of Sefaria, you've gone really deep. I thought maybe we just go back for us newbies to kind of go from the top down to how to get down into that. So I was going to just share a bit about what we do at our shul on Shabbat, which was mainly just to come to Sefaria and to go to the weekly Torah portion. And since we had to go online, the Torah readers had a real struggle because we didn't have the Torah, we didn't have Hagbah, we didn't have all those things. So we took pictures of our Ark, we took pictures of the Torah, but eventually we've gone to using Sefaria as our screen share for Torah services. And it is fantastic for those of us who want to see it in different ways, so you can get the layouts. But it's also, as a Torah reader, it's fantastic to be able to practice with the full trop here, so you can get all the trop marks. And then it's tempting to want to do that even on Shabbat. But if you really want to, read from Torah, then you can turn those all off, and you're reading it from Bli Nekudot, so the Torah service online now is not quite as wonderful as it is when we're together and can see the Torah together, but at least we're all sharing the same thing. And now the next step is we're going to ask people not just to share the screen of Sefaria, but to go to the link themselves so that they can dig deeper and follow those links so that they have an exploring activity on their own. Yes.
Torah reading, I think is meant to be a learning experience too. And so this allows us to do that. That's great. I love that you're doing that. And, we don't have currently pictures of the actual text, in the scriptural, in the scribal way. But maybe one day we will. Thank you for sharing that. I'm happy to do, I want to sort of take whatever you all feel is best for you. I'm happy to do, if we want to do a higher level or, orientation. But before that, I just wanted to just highlight a few other things for the rabbis here. Just other things people have done, creating your sermons on Sefaria, right? Creating maybe you're doing a Substack, maybe you're putting it in PDF in a doc and sending it out. Maybe you're just printing it out for yourself. Whatever it is though, put it on Sefaria, and I'll tell you why. For one, is your audience your Torah is going to get out there, right? And your Torah is going to stay there. I don't know if you ever have trouble tracking down old Divrei Torah, right? Or remember what I said about that last parsha. Things can be hard to organize sometimes. First of all, you can take notes on particular texts on Sefaria, and you can save those notes. It's nice. But also, like, sometimes I'll come across a text and be like, oh, that's a great text. I never saw it before, and realized, oh my God, I put that in a source sheet 2 years ago. I don't even remember what context that was in. So it actually is a good refresher. But when you put your stuff on Sefaria, more people have access to it. A lot of educators don't want to put their things on Sefaria. They're nervous sometimes. Oh, it's not perfect, right? Oh, there might be mistakes. Oh, I'm supposed to be a rabbi. I'm supposed to be a teacher, right? Is this really like my colleagues are going to judge me? I don't know. People do feel this way. We're trying to set a norm here that you don't have to be perfect. And oftentimes, somebody is going to benefit from the things that you put on Sefaria. My first experience with Safaria's team. Actually, it was Rosh Hashanah maybe 4 years ago, and I got a message on Sefaria. Well, before Rosh Hashanah, I got a message on Sefaria, because you can send messages to other people, from the COO of Sefaria telling me, I think it might have been about guns in shul or a different controversial topic. And they said, hey, just to let you know, I'm the CEO of Sefaria. I saw your sheet. I shared it with the team. Like, we love that sheet you made. Like, thanks so much. And I was like, wow, like what a great way to start the year. Like, just imagine your congregants or your students, they're not necessarily giving you feedback all the time, but to get a message. And I've gotten at least a dozen over the years from people at Hillel, chaplains, right? People at Sefaria, that somebody on the other side of the world, so you don't even know, used your sheet and they told you that they used their sheet and really valued it. Like, I feel like if you're an educator, like that's the work. Like, when you hear that, it's like, wow, like my job is I'm doing my job here. A couple other things you can learn in Chavruta on Sefaria. We have a video feature. So you just send a link to somebody and then they will open up a Sefaria window with their face and your face on the side. You can share text with each other. You can chat, all that stuff. There's a lot there. I know that's pretty advanced. Tobias, David, Leo, tell me, what is it that we want to do next? Do we want to go into some of these deeper features or creative uses, or go into like, how do we do this? What's the basics?
Well, I invite from John or Leo who haven't asked a question yet. If there's any curiosity that you have, I know you're both coming from different places in engaging with this.
I was just excited with what you did, Tobias, because this is one of the things that the pandemic did. You had to rethink, and a lot of educators who never would have thought of doing a flipped classroom like you did, and exploring how you could use a digital tool beyond just Zoom. And what I loved when you said is, when I came back to face-to-face, I said, how can I do this? Because the value of having the students engage directly with the resource and be able to become owners of their own knowledge. So I think that's the exciting thing is, in the higher ed field, we have things what are called learning management systems. I hate them. We shouldn't manage learning. We should manage information, let the students learn. But I think that's what I see is the heart of this product. It's the source, which is critical, and you're just wrapping all these instructional tools around it. So hats off to what you guys are doing.
Yeah, and I think I would go further on that. It's very similar, but to me, it's the use we're going to see in the Cheder classes and how they're going to actually start using it, and turning something which is a mystique into a tool that people can actually use and be able to understand and not feel frightened. Because I think that's the same with everything. Is once you start dipping into anything, and you can learn and you can find ways of learning it, you can find the links, and I think that's where you've done a really good job. It's that I think it's the seeing for the rabbis on this. They're already deep in. I think David said this once before. It's like when you come to the High Holy Days, it's the people at the front are doing all the praying, and they basically don't need to. It's us at the back that need a bit more help. And this is a product that I can see, particularly with it. We've got a big problem, I think, around the world about Cheders and how they engage, because the kids are not where they were. They're out. They got to bring them back in.
In terms of terminology, Leo, when you say Cheder, what do you mean?
Hebrew classes and for the kids that are that have a weekly class at synagogue, going up to their bar bat mitzvahs and other things like that. So do you have a similar, what do you refer to that as?
Well, I wasn't sure if you meant only elementary ages, or if you meant the whole Hebrew school in America.
I mean the elementary ages. I mean those ones that are before, the kids which you start off, which are very tech savvy, but they're typically on a Sunday morning they'll go to class and they'll be or they used to go into class on Sunday. Now we're trying to get them in on a digital environment and trying to get them re-engaged in that environment. Yep.
So Loren, do you want to jump in on what are kind of younger access points to Sefaria, and how you've seen it used particularly for younger ages?
Yeah, I have to do some thinking. I'm not in the classroom myself, and so I am a little bit limited. I'm not usually creating a lot of those materials. We do have an educator list where we have lots of lesson plans that explain a lot of these things and what we offer educators to do. I want to say quickly, let me just see if I can show you examples. I mean, we've had people create Haggadahs, right, on Sefaria. I'd have to think again about, younger students in particular. And we don't, for example, up to I think we say we're third grade and up. You have to be able to read, you have to be able to use a computer. I don't want to dodge the question, but I just want to say one thing out before I forget, is that actually I went to our chief data officer the other day and I asked him, I said, hey, Lev, what would you say is one of the more innovative uses of Sefaria? And he actually said something quite simple. So the fact that you can share a Sefaria link on any sort of platform or media is actually quite profound. And I actually really agree to think that if you look at a lot of the conversations that happen online, you can't just make a normative claim about Judaism anymore or about Jewish teaching without citing your sources, because they're all there. And I think it actually really elevates the level of conversation that certainly adults are having around Jewish topics and Jewish values when you actually need to cite your sources. And also not just take my word for it, but actually, go into those texts. So just to be able to share a Jewish text very easily on different media, he thought was very interesting, and as do I. As far as things that are happening in elementary schools, I feel the best thing to do is to talk to the teachers who are doing that. I'm not on the front lines there. So beyond creating collections of student work, having students create their own sheets and sharing their own interpretations on Sefaria, participating in a Haggadah scavenger hunt, I would need to get back to you. But I think those are also very exciting. Yeah, David. David, I guess.
I want to follow up on that, but I feel I need to say that every Sefaria source sheet I've ever made, I have immediately exported to Google Docs so that I can format it myself. I need your email before you leave. I am so excited about this new editor. I'm pishing myself. I can't even begin to tell you. Okay, sorry. I'm curious because when you talk about young elementary kids accessing Sefaria, one of the things that I wonder about is, in some ways, because of the vastness of your library and what feels to me like sources that feel so remote sometimes. I mean, there's so many of them. To a certain extent, I think we are all third graders when we log on to Sefaria. We are, in some ways, we are all the She'enu Yodei Lishol. We don't even know where to begin. We don't even know what questions to ask. And that those three dots that you showed about this text, I wonder how much effort is Sefaria putting into helping people navigate, all of us 3-year-olds or third graders, so that we know how to use it, because I'm not sure that it's as intuitive to use as it could be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I think it totally makes sense. Rabbi Akiva was, at least according to some traditions, was 40, right, when he first learned Aleph Bet. So I think we are all in the same boat here, or will be in a few years. That is our primary right now. We have different sort of audience segments that we're trying to reach, and also different ways that we're trying to reach those different segments. What we might call the newcomer audience is front and center for us right now. And again, is what I mentioned, why we have, redesigned our whole entire website to be at least one step closer to that. So that's absolutely on our radar. So we're trying to give as many access points to explanations, to translations, of more works, to make things more intuitive. And we also know that we're not My Jewish Learning, which is a fantastic website, right? Or any of the other websites that are out there for folks who are looking for a certain type of Jewish literacy. I think for those who are looking to go into the text, those are the people who we are really, trying to sort of, attract, to empower. If you want to know what does Judaism say about X, we do want you to be able to find that on Sefaria. But if you're looking for in 5 minutes to figure out what Judaism says about X, I think a My Jewish Learning article will probably suit you very well. Now, that My Jewish Learning article is probably going to cite sources from Sefaria, and then you might end up back at Sefaria once you want to explore that text more in depth. But we do have webinars and trainings. We're actually working specifically with rabbinical schools a lot right now. I did 2 or 3 workshops this week alone, and we're going to have everybody from the left to the right, and it's quite nice. But regularly we have Safaria 101s, and I'll tell you that I go to these 101s, and even though I've been using Safaria for a number of years and I work for Safaria, I'm always learning something new, a small thing, and those small differences actually save me a lot of time. I was working with a rabbinical school student the other day, and he said, my goal for this session is to learn how to use Sefaria less, because I use it only, and I don't even use the books anymore. And so we actually accomplished that mission in a certain way by showing him certain shortcuts that he's been searching very, inefficiently. So we have 101s. We have deep dive webinars where if somebody wants to know about the actual works that we have on Sefaria, and perhaps even some of the surprising ones. We have, for example, in English, responsum I believe from the Holocaust in English, which is like, wow, I didn't know we had that. We have like dozens of Haggadah commentaries translated into English by this one rabbi, Rabbi Mark Greenspan, a conservative rabbi. He's retired in New York, and in his spare time, he makes translations of Haggadah commentaries and gives them to us. It's amazing. So there's a deep dive webinar. We also have a Sheets webinar where you learn how to make source sheets in like an effective way. So those are 3 of the big ones. And then we have others where we're creating now for clergy, for educators. We have a whole menu of workshops that we offer communities.
That's fantastic. I know Dave wants to jump in.
And before, I just sorry to cut you off. And we have these all on Sefaria recorded. They're all on Sefaria, all recorded. We have collections on Sefaria. So I just want to show you really quickly here. So if I just type in, let's see here, this thing's my way. If I type in webinar, right? Webinars for educators, webinars for learners, right? This little icon here tells me it's a collection. If you remember, this is a topic page. If I want to learn about the topic of webinar in Jewish tradition. But these, so right, I could go webinars for educators. I can click in and it will show me, right? Oh, look, teaching with Safari in a supplementary school, right? I can click that, right? And then go to this webinar. It's recorded, right? And there's a little sort of sheet with the notes from that session, right? Safari in middle school classroom, right? Similar situation, right? So you can, if you want on your own time, if you don't want to attend it live, you can watch any of these, webinars. Let me just see if there's a 101 here. Let's go to learners, right? So Sheets on Safaria, Safaria 101, June 2021. That's probably the best one to look at because it's the most recent, right? And here's the recording if you wanted to watch it. So it's there. And then of course we have like help section, right? Always here, help, right? There's a whole help page. If you want, you can just type in help here, right? Help center. And you have all these. So if Dave, if you're watching here, right in the help center, you have all of these different source sheets. They're source sheets, but they're telling you how to do certain things.
I'm definitely looking. I've got my screen share is over here. That's why I'm looking over there.
I was looking at other Dave, not you.
Oh, the other Dave. Hey, before Dave Kaufman, before you jump in, I just want to share that a friend of the show's, Christo, is watching, and he says that by far what I'm grateful for most is not only the many helpful translations, but also that Sefaria includes the source languages of these texts as well for us to consult. So the connections that are built within Sefaria are not just to ancillary texts, but source links and resources about the text, the source text itself and the languages. Just beautiful. Yeah. Dave, sorry.
I want to pick up, Loren, on a comment about Sefaria as a platform, because as Synagogue Tech, it's very interesting to be looking, we're often looked at the visionaries of what to do about the tech stuff now that we have to do so much online that we can't do it in person in synagogue life. And I'm reminded of my Chabad friend who was telling me, who's also a programmer, who was saying, as age of Mashiach approaches, the gates of the lower and the gates of the upper wisdom come together. And he, interpret that as, tech is going to be in service of enlightenment, of nefesh, of ruach, of Mashiach. So it's a very interesting mission to take on, as Zoom was the platform that we all jumped to when we had to react to having services and teaching online. And it became the platform of which we have these peripheral things like share screen or video switchers to try to enhance that experience. And what I'm hearing here is the potential of the mission for platforms become centric, of which they also do video conferencing, of which you also can have a conversation with friend with Chavruta, but that the platform replace Zoom as the center of things, that if Sefaria can be the center of my learning time, and I can also reach out and have a conversation with Loren because I want to ask about something like this, and that becomes the place we reside for our learning instead of being Zoom with a bunch of peripherals.
Well, Dave, you're right on the money, because there was a beta of a Beit Midrash feature. So Loren, can you give us just a little preview of, you can just tell us about what that's going to enable, and the community learning aspect that you shared with me?
Yeah, I'm looking for the actual, I'm trying to find here. Let's go. Well, I don't have a great image right now, but picture this. Imagine Sefaria. Here, let me just share my screen. This is like a very old picture, but if you can see here, here's just like a screenshot, right? Where you're on Sefaria, and you can also see who else is in the Beit Midrash at the same time and what they're studying. And Russell is learning Genesis 15. I can click, and then it would open up Genesis 15 right here. Or I might say, Nissa is studying, some text I'd never heard of. Like, what's that text? And I could click there, and I'm like, wow, there we go. Like, just interesting to see what people are studying. I could chat with Nissa. I could video with Nissa. Here's like an example here, right? Hello. So I don't have better pictures at this very moment. But yeah, we have this Beit Midrash because we're a library, right? And then we're a source sheet builder. So first we go from like the solo, independent learning thing to like, oh, it's a source sheet, usually for other people, right? It's interactive, but it's not on Sefaria. But learning is like a community endeavor. And we actually ran a bunch of surveys after this Beit Midrash beta test, and many people said, I felt like I was part of a learning community. I felt like I could see people turning the pages, right? I could see what people were learning. I didn't feel like I was siloed. And are we going to be a substitute for Zoom? Are we going to be a substitute for the yeshiva or the seminary or the classroom, right? Or the synagogue? No. And that's okay. People are important in person too. But to actually create a sort of learning environment on Sefaria, and if I could see what other people are studying, I could see who they are. I could see what sheets they've made. I can message them, hey, I noticed you made a certain sheet. Like I have a question about, or, hey, I noticed you're studying the book of Joel too. Do you want to learn together? Right. Just by chance, because I saw Tobias is learning the book of Joel. So there's a lot of potential here. And I think, it's part of this deeper idea that we're not trying to be like a library, but actually to be like a communal space, not the communal space, not the JCC, and not the space for everybody at all times. But actually, while I am learning on Sefaria, to make it a more interactive experience.
Yeah. One of my favorite pages at Sefaria is the staff page, because it's all these job titles that I never thought would be part of a Jewish organization. And it's kind of interesting, it's starting in Sefaria, but I wonder when this kind of thinking is applied to, how he runs synagogues or how Jewish movements come together. So I'll just share that. A Jewish company, if that's how you define yourselves, with a chief technology officer, with a chief data officer, even a chief learning officer. That's like a position that I don't know, that's our favorite outreach and engagement associate. But like having all these really different skill sets pointed at the problem or at the activity of Jewish learning and Jewish ritual, as Dave mentioned, is just so exciting. And like, I'm sure his job is kind of like as the manager of text acquisition and text quality, it's, bring library science into this realm. But I just love that there's this organization that's growing that has this other skill set completely outside of what most Jewish organizations are constituted of.
Yeah, and I think to that point, Tobias, is that there's an interaction between us all, right? So I get to, I work with the engineers, we beta test everything, right? Like I feel like sometimes maybe in institutions, there are silos in different, organizations, or there might be like one person that all of the library people will report to. Maybe that person talks to somebody else who then, trickles down to another team. But the idea that like we all work together, I think is very valuable, and we have to, right? Because we are the ones who are using it. And we notice when there are things that need to be changed or have ideas, or we hear from people like you. And so I think that's also something to think about in institutions, is how can we get everybody, both the people who are on the ground or front end and the back end, to all work together. It's another challenge.
Wow. just look around the panel, see if there was any other comments or questions to bring in at this time. And John, yeah,
John.
Well, I just want to again commend you what you're doing. Information literacy is a big challenge in general. What are the reference sources? We have so many sites that are just trying to get clicks to get to an advertiser rather than focusing on the information. And, I think you're teaching more than you think you are in terms of changing the way we approach our resources and share them with people. So I just want to give a hats off.
David?
Thank you.
I'm a little stuck on Tobias, you referencing us to the staff page, because now I'm really intrigued by what you said about that should a synagogue have a chief learning officer and a chief of staff, a junior content engineer? I mean, it's a fascinating question. I was wondering, Loren, one of the things that I have been talking with synagogues a lot about is the importance of having someone on staff who knows their tech and knows their Torah. You can't have someone switching a service or running
at the wrong time or something,
right?
Yeah.
Or running, if you're teaching a class, having someone manage your slides or whatever. If there's something about knowing the Torah. And as I'm looking at this, your tech people, it looks like they know their Torah too. What is the relationship there in how Sefaria works?
I love that. So I actually don't go by rabbi at my job. That's by choice, but also none of us go by rabbi. And there are several of us who do have smicha, who do have ordination, even those of us who are not in education, capacities. I think that I think to work at Sefaria, I mean, it's not just enough to know how to code, for example. You actually a lot of times have to know at least some sort of understanding of Jewish text and also be very passionate about the work. I think basically everybody from, there's no up down here, but looking at the pictures, everybody has some significant Jewish learning background, is married to somebody who has some significant Jewish learning background. I would say, our chief data officer, also spent many years in yeshiva. Brett, who is our co-founder and CTO, he himself currently is not, practices in different ways than he used to practice, but grew up, going to NCSY, in Kollel and studied in Israel. So it's really, but not everybody's observant. Not everybody's observant to the same extent. Which is also interesting, but Torah is the thing that unites us. I want to share just one source sheet really quickly to take a look at, which is we do these Sefaria staff picks, right? And I think this also highlights the idea that we're all learners here, right? So we each, from Daniel, our CEO, everybody submitted, right, to Annie, our chief operating officer, right, submitted a text and their own little comment on why they chose that particular text. I don't know why I made fourth billing here. I shouldn't have. But this is, I think, part of that, which is we are all learners, non-tech and tech alike. Torah's, so I think this is actually, I'm going to share it with folks.
Loren, do you have 40,000 tabs open?
Oh, yeah, it's complicated. It's very complicated. Don't ask me. Usually I minimize this one, but I'm planning a trip, to Anza Borrego desert. So it's quite a thing. I just share with you a source sheet.
When you're coming out to the desert, I work with the California State Parks and we'll connect you with an interpreter there.
Oh, amazing. Thank you.
Hey, Loren, I know this isn't, the point of this is not feedback, but something just happened to you that happens to me all the time. And it's interesting. You opened a sheet and then whether it was by accident or not, you clicked on a source and then everything moved to the side and the sidebar came up with all the commentaries. And do you know what I'm talking about?
The resource panel.
Yeah, and every time that happens, so every time that, if I go in and I want to highlight a piece of text or something, that resource panel opens up and it moves everything out of line. And especially if I'm sharing it in I don't know, it's an interesting I mean, that resource panel is indispensable, but it's just the way it pops out is.
It's something we discuss. And I had a conversation with another congregational rabbi. And what he does, instead, he teaches from his own personal sheet in like the editor view, which for all the people here understand that. But yeah, it is definitely something that we hear about, we think about, we consider, and is, always part of the conversation.
It's almost like you need a presentation mode versus browsing mode.
I was just thinking that.
This is why we have these conversations. Yeah, thank you. I'm going to write that down.
I have a feature request that came out in this conversation too.
Please, we hear them all.
Which is, but I love that presentation mode is great. Once you're kind of done building and searching, but just like you have all these terms linked to sources linked to topics, it'd be great if you got the steps in order to auto pull video sermons from our shuls, and then auto transcribe them, and then see which sources are getting used or which topics are getting mentioned, and kind of automatically eventually database sermons, video and text, which I know you were doing some sermon compiling this past High Holy Days, so you might be heading in that direction. But I just thought that's where that's one way that this would grow and grow and grow.
Yeah. I mean, I would say first of all, you want to probably be careful, because when your congregants find out that you gave the same sermon, word for word, 10 years ago, they might want to know what they're paying for. I would imagine that does happen. So, be careful what you wish for. But yeah, I mean, as far as transcriptions go, that's probably beyond us at this moment. But a lot of shuls and organizations are transcribing right now, and sending it by email for those who can't make it. And as I said before, even if it's a bit more manual work, then an easy sort of crawling and importing, highly recommend put it on Sefaria. And also that means that when you're sending it out to your community, you could send it by a WhatsApp, for example, just with a link to Sefaria, instead of a whole PDF or a document or a whole, shul newsletter. You could put your shul newsletter on Sefaria if you wanted to, really. And also if things change, you just update it. Like that's the thing, it's live. So, maybe you decided, instead of having to have your sermon, you had to have your sermon in by Thursday, but, I realized, Saturday morning or Friday afternoon, there was something I wanted to add. Now I can add it.
That gave me a thought also, is that you could have like a bookmarked home-based Sefaria link for every Shabbat Torah Saturday morning that has the sources replaced before the next one. So it wouldn't be a historical repository of all your source sheets, but it would be like a stable, you give a stable Zoom link, everyone come to the same Zoom link every Saturday. This would also be like a stable.
Well, what you could do, and I'm just show this really quickly, is you can bookmark things, right? In general, you can bookmark. First of all, you could bookmark sources, right? I'm just going to go right, just to the source, right? I can click here, bookmark. And what that's going to do is it's going to bookmark it. So I'll just click here, and it's going to take a second to load. It takes like a second to load sometimes, but anyways, it'll be here, right?
Yeah.
It's going to show up here. You could do that with source sheets too, right? I could bookmark a source sheet in the same way. And so that way, if you look here, right? Look here. Here are some sources that are bookmarked. Here's a sheet, right? Maybe you have your congregants who have accounts on Sefaria. Let's replace Joseph and Hanukkah looking to the darkness with shul information for, Shabbat. And like every week you update that one sheet. And in that sheet, maybe you have a different link, which will take you to the sheet that you want. Right. So you don't necessarily have to keep changing this sheet, but it'll just change it to the link that it does. So you could, that's why I said in the beginning that this is really like not wool and flax. What is it? Not wool and flax. The
Pandora's box. No.
Yeah. There is, Sefaria is a structure, but you can think creatively. And I think that's what you do so well. All of you is you think creatively about using the things that we already have. And so I would encourage you to do the same thing with Sefaria. How can I make my source sheets more interactive? How could I make them more multimedia? How can I just be playful with them a little bit? So, that's just an example of how you might do it for a shul.
What Tobias threw out is like the biggest ask ever. Crawl the web, find every video sermon, and then, but of course, it made me think of something that Tobias and I both know about, which is a service called Descript, which takes video files and lets you edit them by transcribing the entire video file. So it auto transcribes the entire video file. So you could use something like Descript, put somehow, put videos into there, and then every time a source is mentioned, it, as you did on all these other sites, it links right back to Sefaria.
And David, I think the giddiness of this meeting in general is that if 30 years ago or 100 years ago or 300 years ago, if a yeshiva bacher at yeshiva said, "Rabbi, I can't afford all these books. I can't afford all these manuscripts. I wish there was this one screen that's everywhere I go and in my pocket, and it has all of Jewish texts linked together," they would have said that's just as impossible.
I'll never forget in my, I think it was my third year of rabbinical school, the YU book sale was coming up. And I said to myself, I did not have a full shas. I didn't have a full set of the Talmud. And I said, how could I possibly, I'm never going to open half of these books, but how could I possibly be a rabbi now? So I went down to YU book sale and I bought myself a full shas. And as predicted, I have not opened most of them. But yeah, and now the entire world has a full shas, multiple versions of a full shas.
On that, I want to say, yeah, absolutely. This isn't a substitute for books. In fact, like, the publishers that we work with, their sales have not gone down, right? Because the people who would buy a full shas probably they're probably using the shas, or they want it anyways. But what you said reminded me of two stories. First of all, I heard this from the CEO of Sefaria, but it's also true in my own life. I remember from yeshiva, sometimes if you needed to look up a commentator, you would go to everyone would have their own reference shas and their own Rambam, right? But then you would go to like the commentary bookshelf, because not everybody has every commentary, and there'd be like three for like a yeshiva of like 300 people, right? And they have to go wait, or you have to go photocopy or something like that. Like now, you just pull it up. There's like, everybody has it. One of the mitzvahs of the Torah is to write your own Sefer Torah. In a sense, we have now. We all have our own Sefer Torah. I actually did get a call from a yeshiva bacher, either it was in Borough Park or in Lakewood, and they said, "Hey, love Sefaria, longtime fan. We don't do smartphones. Well, some of us do smartphones, but we don't really do smartphones. We have flip phones. So Sefaria, flip phone, what can you do for us?" And apparently if you look online, there's a website called appsforflip.com by a bunch of yeshiva guys. And yeah, they are about taking these, more complex technologies and bringing them to flip phones. So we share with them our data. And so now there are at least, a few people out there who have Sefaria on a flip phone. Now, I don't know what that actually looks like, but both for like the simple tech, but also the more advanced tech, like we like to say, really like ask for anything, like anything's doable. Anything's doable. Just some things are higher priority, a bit more complex than others. So please, like whenever you have suggestions for how we can be better or different, like we want to hear them, and whether we get to them or not, like that's to be determined. But if you would have asked anybody if they could imagine what Sefaria 10, 15 years ago would be today, yeah, it's really something special.
Everything seems
is
impossible
Sefaria?
until it's not.
That's right. Yeah, Dave. How young is Sefaria?
Sefaria, I think it's from 2000. I think the prototype, I believe, was like in 2008, I want to say. No, let me see here. Beta version 2012. And then we got like our first investment 2013. So fairly young. But like the original idea was 2011. And by the way, not from scholars or rabbis. It was from Josh Foer, who was an author, and Brett, who himself had studied in yeshiva, but he was working at Google. He was not like a Jewish scholar at the time. So Sefaria is not founded by, educators. It's founded by people who just feel like we should own our own texts, because for a long time, the only translation of the Talmud available online was a copy of the Sansino that was actually on an anti-Semitic website called comeandhear.com. If you remember that, I used to use that in undergrad. Comeandhear.com. It's like come and hear all the terrible things, but we own our own texts, and so that's kind of Sefaria's genesis.
I think we're going to wrap up in just the next few minutes. So I'll invite from David and Dave if you have any final comment or short question. But want to thank you, Loren, so much for giving us this inside look at some of the newest features and encouraging us to use some of the oldest features that we haven't discovered yet. And you speak with such excitement about what the organization is doing, and so did the panel today. So thank you for being on that cutting edge. And David, did you want to show something?
I'm just. I can't remember the last time that I went to the visualizations page. It's insane. It's unbelievable. Just unbelievable.
And something you can use this for education too. You could say what does it teach me about a text?
Right.
What does it teach me about this particular tractate of Talmud that it cites a lot of things from Genesis, right? That tells me something about the text without even opening up the text.
Look at that.
So you can use them in really cool ways.
Yeah, how Yevamot is so heavily in Leviticus and Vayikra and Devarim, Leviticus, Deuteronomy. That it's just. I'm so glad you're on the team over there. I don't have any more. I'm just so glad you're on the team, and I already sent you an email. I want that beta. I want to play with it. I'm so excited.
Dave?
Yeah, I haven't seen that visualization. Thanks so much. There's so much depth here that we haven't been able to explore. And now we have an open door to do it. Thanks, Loren.
Yeah. And Loren's reminding anyone to check out the Help Center within Sefaria and in those collections for learners and educators, and hello@sefaria.org with any questions. Awesome. Thank you so much, Loren. We would welcome you and team members back anytime, both to be a featured guest like you were today, but also when we discuss other topics within synagogue tech and how synagogues are doing more remotely or hybrid or looking towards the future. It would be great to have this angle on Jewish text and Jewish learning as part of the panel, regardless of our focus of the week. So you have a permanent invite. So thank you so much. And let's see, it's Thursday. We can say Shabbat Shalom. Is it Thursday? Yeah. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Thank you for having me. Thank you for using Sefaria, for learning, for teaching, and please be in touch anytime. If I can help you use Sefaria in more creative, better, more accessible ways, that's what I'm trying to do.
And to all those who are watching, including Christo, thank you for being here. Thank you for watching with us. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.